Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of our localization tutorial series. In this video, we're going to go ahead and work on the localized text class that we created in the last video. But before we do, I want to go ahead and set up the scene for our test of the resources. So let's go ahead and add a UI element. It's going to be a text. And then we're going to go ahead and click Shift and Alt, and in this bottom corner, it's going to stretch it so that its anchors are on the border of the actual canvas or scene, or however you want to reference this. But it's going to allow us to actually center this text and it be in the very center of the game. So I'm also going to, or center the screen, not the game. I'm also going to go ahead and raise this up probably to 32. Looks good to me. And then I'll just keep it as new text. But what I want to do is change that color to white, which looks terrible with that background. But then I'm going to go into the main camera, and instead of a skybox, I want a solid color and change that to black. Now the white doesn't look too bad. Alright, and then on this text component, what I want to go ahead and do is add the localized text class to it, and then let's go ahead and open that up. Alright, so I went ahead and cleaned up the localized text class from the from us creating it. I went ahead and put it inside of my namespace, which is going to be GrayMatter.monobehaviors.ui, which, if you do recall from the first video, I said is going to essentially mirror the folder structure. And then I also have it inheriting from monobehavior, which you're going to need a reference to the Unity engine for that. We're also going to need a reference to the Unity engine.ui because we're going to reference a text component. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and say private text m_text component and private void awake. In the awake function, I typically get any of the references that I need for the class, and in this case, it's going to be the text component. So m text component equals get component text. And then to ensure that there is always going to be a text component, I'm just going to add this as a failsafe, even though it's not necessarily a failsafe, but we're going to just assume that this will always work. So in some cases it doesn't. I can't give you those specific cases because I can't think of them off the top of my head. I just know in the past it hasn't. So private string m key. Okay, so what are we going to do with this m key? Well, first off, we're going to serialize it before I forget it. So this key here is going to allow us to type in a key, obviously, but this key is going to reference the resource manager, and it's going to get a resource with the exact same key. But the reason we're doing it this way, instead of like, really this is the only way you could do it. So you could have it just get the resource manager and get a static key and stuff like that, but then there's no reason to have a localized text. Geez, this is so terrible. I can't really explain this. Okay, so what is the local Okay, so inside this class, I went ahead and cleaned it up. I went ahead and put it in. Alright, so you'll notice that this class has been cleaned up. I've went ahead and wrapped the class inside of my namespace, which, if you recall, is going to almost mirror, the folder structure. It's going to say GrayMatter.monobehaviors.ui. I obviously skipped scripts because that's kind of a given. So I went ahead and wrapped it in my namespace, and then I also have it inheriting from monobehavior, which we're going to need a reference to using Unity engine, or the Unity engine. So then we're also going to be using the Unity engine.editor.ui because we're going to be making a reference to a text component. We're actually going to be changing the text of a text component. And the reason that we do it this way is because, first off, we can't get into the text component. We can create our own text component, but why create something that's already been created? So what this class is going to be doing is essentially providing the logic of a text component that just kind of displays the format of the text, which if you look at that text component, that would be this right here, which is where we set the alignment, we set the font size, and we, I don't think we changed much more. Oh yeah, we changed the color as well. So this tells you what the format of the text is going to be like. Now we're going to provide the logic for the text. So to go ahead and do that, hold on, before I start, I kind of want to mention something. So if you're not localizing your text, all you have to do is in here type play. Okay, now if you want like a default of anything, for instance, well, I want to know what this text actually does later. Well, then have it say play. That's not going to hurt anything because this localized text is still going to change things regardless of what it actually says in the editor. So if you need the editor to tell you what it's going to be, that's fine. But I'm just going to say like, yeah, we'll say dummy. This is just going to be a test. Or I could actually say test, but I like the word dummy, so we'll use that. It's like a dummy function. Yeah, it's pretty popular in programming. Either way, so let's create a reference to the text, which is mText component. All right, to ensure that there's always going to be a text component, let's go ahead and do require component type of text. And then we'll say private void awake mText component equals get component text. Okay, and last thing we need to do is have a private string mKey. And we're going to serialize that field because the way that we get private variables to show up in the inspector is we have to serialize it. So what are we using this key for? Well, we're really going to be using this key to reference the resource manager and say, we need this string that has this key for the culture or the locale or whatever we want to call it for the language that the system is using. And we are going to use the systems language. We could allow them to change languages, but we're not going to cover that here. If you want to do that, I'll probably go ahead and create a third video and talk about how we might actually implement something like that, or how you could implement something like that. But I'm not going to do it in this tutorial series, like actually showing you guys how to do stuff. I'm going to show you how to get the system one because I feel as if that's going to be the more popular route. All right. So that's it for this class. So I'll go ahead and see you in the next video. We are going to come back to this class when we actually finish the resource manager because we're going to need to make a call to it, which is why we need this key. But let's go ahead and look on here what actually pops up. Okay, so yeah, you'll see this key down here, and for that I'm going to just say hello because later I'm going to have it say hello. So I'll go ahead and see you in the next video.